Now, this week, while House Democrats mulled over impeachment, you had lawmakers that were taking up legislation, for example, like a budget. Now, in this budget legislation, there was supposed to be some very sweeping changes to other things. Now, one of them was a bipartisan effort to take on surprise billing. So now, those of you who aren't familiar with this, who are lucky enough to not have had a surprise bill, it's basically where you go to a hospital that you think is in your insurance network, and you're ended up getting seen by a doctor who is not in your network, who happens to be there at the time. So you think, well, I went to a hospital that's in my network. My insurance should cover everything. I've got my deductible all paid, did my copay. And so I go home. And then a couple weeks later, an unexpected, really expensive bill shows up because that doctor that treated you happened to not be in your insurance network. So that is surprise billing, right? And so you can see that for obvious reasons, why that would be super unpopular among both sides of the aisle. And you have both Republicans and Democrats that hate the idea of surprise billing, especially when it comes to the voters. In fact, I got a poll later on that we'll talk about that shows how unpopular this is and how popular a bipartisan effort to control this is. All right, so now this legislation, again, would have put an end to that surprise billing. However, it did not actually make it into the budget bill as it was supposed to. So now why? It turns out that there are some lawmakers that were a little bit worried that it would reduce the pay of certain high-level doctors and specialists. Now, according to the Times, the New York Times, by the way, and here's the thing about the New York Times. They're not really that trustworthy of a source anymore. And this article framing kind of lays it out because this is framed in a way to make it a quote unquote cautionary tale for Democrats trying to pass Medicare for all. Well, I mean, if you're going to try to pass Medicare for all, well, look at what they did to the surprise billing bill. I mean, they crushed it. So you might want, you might as well not even try. That's the framing of this article. So look, that's their perspective. In reality, this kind of article and this kind of story shows exactly why we need Medicare for all to pass. Now, the White House, major consumer groups, Democrats and Republicans both worked together and endorsed this plan. So how did it not make it? Well, it turns out there were some very key lawmakers, two of which, actually, the two key lawmakers in this story that tanked the bill were both Democrats. Yeah. So now, let me go to the Times here. They said the lack of the plan in the year-end spending bill reflected certain lawmakers' reluctance to pursue an approach that would reduce doctors' pay. The poor doctors, right? Oh, no. Oh, God, I feel so bad for you. And not for the people that get massive surprise bills in the mail when thinking that they had everything covered already. I know, but yeah, poor doctors, right? Jesus. But anyway, one of the people who killed it was a very powerful, influential Democrat named Richard Neal. He is the House Ways and Means Committee chairman. So he got together, Richard Neal did, with a Republican to introduce something that is more corporate friendly, right? More doctor friendly, I should say. And you're not going to be surprised that Richard Neal has taken a lot of money from not only doctors, hospitals, but also private equity groups. In fact, one of his donors is the Blackstone Group. So that's a private equity firm that owns the physician staffing organization Team Health. Now, it turns out Blackstone donated about $29,000 to Neal's 2020 reelection campaign this year, according to the Center for Responsive Politics. Now, again, he teamed up with Kevin Brady, who's a Republican, to kill that plan and to put forward his other plan. Now, the other Democrat here that basically doomed this piece of bipartisan legislation is none other than the sarcastic, clapping master legislator herself, Nancy Pelosi. Give her a hand of applause. In fact,
please clap.
Yeah. Well done, Nancy. Well done. Now, she did not put a stop to it as she could have. She could have overruled this and made sure that this bill, that this rule got into the budget bill. She did not. So now, let's get to more dark money, right? Dark money group called Doctor-Patient Unity, which is both Orwellian and hilarious, which is funded by two large private equity-funded physician staffing companies, spent tens of millions of dollars on television advertisements and direct mail, urging lawmakers to oppose the bill. Lobbyists for doctors, hospitals, air ambulance companies, and private equity funds also spent a lot of money to try to defeat this bill. They spent a lot in lobbying. Now, because of that money in politics, here you got a piece of legislation that had massive public approval, as well as bipartisan consensus. And look, let me show you how popular this was. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, 78% of adults said they wanted this problem fixed. They support this. 57% said they would support a solution, even if it meant lower pay for healthcare providers, which this would actually reduce their pay about 15 to 20%. Again, this is not your normal family doctor. A lot of this has to do with specialists. So let's be fair about that. Nonetheless, this could not pass. It couldn't get strong enough support from the Democrats in order to pass. Republicans, as this piece of New York Times point out, were an instrumental ally in this. Even Republican lawmakers were like, yes, let's get this passed. Let's do this. You even had the establishment, Frank Pallone, who was a Democrat from New Jersey, takes a lot of money, corporate money. Even he was like, no, let's get this passed. Let's do this. Working with the Republicans in order to pass something that is incredibly popular. And it was the Democrats that stopped it. That's crazy. But you know what did pass? This didn't. But more tax cuts for health insurers. That made it into the final bill. This includes the repeal of taxes on medical devices. Tax cuts for corporations. Surprise billing for you. That's what you get from this bill. That's what you get from the Democrats. And corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans, by the way. So as I said before, this is presented by the New York Times as a cautionary tale for Democrats when it came to Medicare for All. When in reality, it's a good example of the corrupting influence of money in politics, which is why things like this that have popular approval never get to pass. You have this corruption. Yes, our lawmakers are corrupt, and it's legalized bribery. Nancy Pelosi takes bribes in order to shut down legislation that might hurt specialist doctors that make a lot of money already, just a little bit. And so they sent out their army of lobbyists, these staffing firms, private equity, to shut it down. And Nancy Pelosi says, yes, sir, what can I do for you? I mean, her and Richard Neal. And Richard Neal, one of the most corrupt POSs on the Democratic side. This is what happens, man, when you have a corrupt government. This is what happens. Look, so the reason is, the reason that I'm talking about this, and the way to fight this is, look, the money in politics is the issue that precedes all other issues. If you don't solve this problem of people taking massive donations from corporations and then doing the corporate, doing the bidding of the corporations, then we're never going to get anything done. We're never going to pass our agenda. And that's why we need not only a political revolution, which involves electing people who don't take corporate money, whether it be, I don't know, I would love to see an equivalent kind of movement on the right, where there are members of the right wing that say we're not going to take corporate money either, and we're going to actually do real conservative principles. And now, unfortunately, that doesn't seem to exist on the right wing, but it does on the left. You have Justice Democrats, by the way, that don't take any corporate money. And there's this movement to get progressives elected. That's part of the political revolution. And not only that, but we've got to get all the money out of politics. Corporate money, union money, billionaire money, get it all out and do public financing of elections. Because right now in the system that we have, if you have private financing, well, then the politicians are going to serve private interests. That's why we need public financing. Both of those goals, however, do require that people get involved, whether it be running for office, which a lot of people are, or voting, getting involved in primaries. Because again, primaries are the most important races that you could be involved in. And you have to get involved or else nothing is going to change. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.